So thank you for coming today to the first day of our second annual Peace Week celebration in the LA Harbor area. We're very grateful to have so many people in attendance at our press conference. I see a lot of youth, I see elders, veterans, civilians, artists, teachers, healthcare workers, parents, and concerned citizens. We're here, first of all, I want to represent for the monument that we are covering up temporarily. Please forgive us, Joe Hill. This is a very famous monument in San Pedro celebrating free speech. And we hope that this space will be used a lot to talk about the issues that concern our community. Starting tomorrow will be the second annual LA Fleet Week, where several active Navy ships will be stationed in our commercial harbor over the Labor Day week. Over 2,000 active Navy sailors and hundreds of personnel from all branches of the U.S. military will be here. There will be military air shows, lots of military propaganda, pageantry, and recruitment, with the years to come seeing larger and larger military presence during subsequent annual LA Fleet Weeks. We are here to show that there is another way to run an economy. There is another way to run a society. And there is another way to run a foreign policy. Can I have an applauso? For sure. These comments were from a 2-minute comment period that I made last year to the Central San Pedro Neighborhood Council when we first heard that Fleet Week was coming to our harbor. I was 23 when we first invaded Iraq. That was 25 years ago. We have been bombing or patrolling that country for a quarter of a century, and we wonder why there is ISIS today. Today's American households on average are paying $75,000 annually in war taxes. Almost half of our income taxes are going to fund war in one form or another, either to pay for past wars, to wage current wars, or to prepare for future wars. Wars that are making us less safe, not more safe. Wars that create failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse, terrorist threats. We have poured $5 trillion into the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. 1 million Iraqis have been killed, 100,000 Afghans, and thousands of Americans. Our drones and bombs and our Middle East military bases are causing, not lessening, the recruitment of ISIS and Al-Qaeda militants. It is because of this militarism, this non-stop war, that we built Peace Week together. It is not the men, it is the mission of the U.S. military. Fleet Week, as we see it, is a huge subsidized promotion of war and of the military recruitment of our youth. The Navy, just for this next year, wants $165 billion U.S. tax dollars, including $45 billion for more weapons and military infrastructure. Fleet Week has been called a big opportunity. To me, people looking at military promotion and an economic windfall is like looking at post-invasion Iraq, like we did, as a business opportunity. We should be morally opposed to making money off war. And that is why we are here today and why we will be here all week during the second annual Peace Week. Thank you. We have several speakers here today from various perspectives, from their personal perspectives, and I'd like to first have Tina Lopez from Military Families Speak Out, and she will be speaking in Spanish because we have the wonderful Telemundo right here filming. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Me llamo Tina Lopez y este grupo tiene familiares que son en el militario y nosotros somos contra las guerras y queremos que regresen nuestros queridos sin heridos o con problemas mentales y cuidarlos bien cuando regresan. Saben ustedes que la razón que tenemos este Fleet Week es que quieren reclutar los jóvenes, los hombres, mujeres para ir a las guerras. Estamos en muchas guerras en todo el mundo. Y cuando dice el presidente que van a estas guerras, no pueden decir no, no puedo. Nuestros familiares van como dice el presidente. Y este presidente está engañando a todos nosotros. Y necesita cuidar las cosas que dice el presidente. Muchas gracias.
And next we are going to have Pat Alviso from Military Family Speak Out, who has her son actively in the military right now and in harm's way.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you all of you for being here in solidarity during these difficult years. We've been at war for 16 years, the longest war in U.S. history. And I'm here to talk about the human cost of war. As you know, my son's in the military, but he has been deployed 6 times. He's been to Iraq, Afghanistan, and now he's on one of these naval ships in the Persian Gulf. What I want to let you know about this Fleet Week business that's going on is that this is no time for the military to be celebrating anything. When you think about it, just in the last year we've had 3 naval ships go down in different ways. One was grounded, another we lost about 8 sailors, and just recently the 10 sailors. How can they continue to wage these wars when there's obviously some serious internal problems? I'm here to say on a personal level that the military has nothing to celebrate. We've lost over 7,000 U.S. troops. Well over 1 million innocent civilians have died in these wars. And what has anybody got to show for this? When you think about it and just take a pause, the military needs to stop and think about what we're going to do next. And diplomacy is the only answer. We've been at war for 16 years. There is no end in sight. And I think that we need to all stop and do everything we can to speak out as military families speak out. It's a very sad day for us. We can stop and see some of our sailors walking by. And as Tina said, you know, those that have joined the military, it's not their choice once they've enlisted about whether or not to follow orders. It's up to us, the people, to speak out and say, these wars are over. It's the politicians who start this war, and it is up to we, the people, to end them. And I ask you all to still stay strong, continue to speak out, let everybody know that we want our troops home now so that we can start taking care of them when they get here. Thank you.
And next we are going to hear from Tim Kaylor, also with Military Families Speak Out. And he is the dad of a disabled Iraq combat veteran. Thank you. Please welcome.
I remember when my son was little, we lived in San Diego and we took him to Fleet Week. And he'd get on the ships and salute whoever was greeting him at the beginning of the ship, and he thought it was so amazing to look at those ships. Well, that's the shiny, bright object that Fleet Week shows. They show the good side, education, getting to travel, getting a career in the military, or even a job that you can get out of the military in so many years and you can have a career. But they don't show the other side. We do not show the total cost of war. When my son, in 2002, he went to his orthodontist and said, I need my braces off so I can go to basic training. So he got his braces off. The military offered him $12,000, and he would get to live in Germany. Guaranteed. So he went in and he left our house, and we had nothing we could do about it. He was 18 years old by the time he signed, and we could not do one thing. He went. We didn't want him to join, but I wanted him to do what he wanted to do, and I tried to support him because I was not thinking about the Iraq War at the time. It hadn't started. I was totally just being a dad, husband, and trying to take care of my family. And then, on March 18th, 2003, they picked my son up and took him down so he could go to basic training. The day before we bombed Iraq, I thought, oh, it'll last a month or so. My son will not be in harm's way. My son ended up within 3 or 4 months after getting out of boot camp. Well, right from boot camp, he went to Frankfurt, and then he was guaranteed that they said that if you go to Iraq, instead of staying and going to Hohensfeld, we'll give you you'll get ranked quicker, and you won't have to pay taxes on your income. 18 years old, 19-year-old, what did they say? They go for it. So he went to Iraq, and after over 24 months in Iraq on 2 deployments, in the Army you go for a longer period of time. He went for 12 months, and then he went for 15, or he went for 15 months, and then he went for 12 months. He came home. When he was in basic training, he looked like this, a smiling, happy kid. When I got him back, by the time 2007, which I've been carrying this poster since 2006, and it used to show how many people were killed in Iraq. When I got him back in 2007, he was gone. My little boy was gone. He wasn't there. That kid that had the big heart, that was always helping everybody out and doing good things in the neighborhood, was gone. He was empty. And then the fight started. There was a fight in 2006 to get the body armor. See, the total cost of a war is not told to you. They tell you the shiny ship, pardon my French, they show you the ships and all the pretty things and all the good stuff, but they do not show you the cost afterwards. And that's when the parents and the spouses have to step in and take over. I called until my son was finally diagnosed with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. Then, that doesn't... Also, all the surgeries he had on his arms, my son looks good. When you see him, he looks normal, but he has tons of injuries. He has to go through pain management. He's constantly having to go to the doctor. He's having surgery next month, and now we wait in line at the VA. All these things go on and on and on, and he's in line with people from the Vietnam War. See, that's the money we don't talk about, that it cost war. It doesn't tell you about what it costs when you find your son curled up in the corner because he's having such bad nightmares, and he breathes like he's being burned up, because at one point he was in a Bradley that caught on fire, and he passed out in there, and they pulled him out. He still has those dreams to this day. This is what we don't talk about, the other cost of war. When we see these young men and women that are offered so much, they don't tell them that there's a chance that you can lose a limb, that you can have 3rd-degree burns. I was out at San Marcos State several years ago, and they were talking to me about what I thought about ROTC coming to San Marcos State. And I said, great, let's bring it in. But I want at least 50% of the teachers be 3rd-degree burns and missing limbs. So until we talk about the reality of the cost of war and quit putting shiny ships out here and telling these young men and women that it's such a great thing, and don't tell them the whole story, that we have no business in sending any more troops. So I want them brought home now, I want them taken care of when they get home, and no more troops to Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We will next hear from Michael Lindley of Veterans for Peace Los Angeles, and also of the Arlington West Memorial in Santa Monica. Michael.
Thank you very much. The memorial in Santa Monica has been running now for every Sunday for over 13 years. It's a memorial, again, same thing, the human cost of war. We talk about the human cost of war, and we also talk about the financial part of the war. One thing they don't talk about in the cost of war, as we find out, is collateral damage, and why it happens, and what happens when we drop bombs and destroy infrastructure of these countries. There's probably over 3 million civilians that have died in the war. The government will acknowledge a fact of collateral damage, about maybe 80 or 90,000. But what they don't talk about, and what they should be talking about, is cholera, polio, and different diseases that are caused because we bomb out these cities and we destroy their infrastructure so they can't take care of their civilians with clean water and health care. They bomb the hospitals. We have to talk about this stuff. There are reasons why we're here, and that's important. We need to understand what the reasons are all about. If we go out, we could come up with 100 reasons why we shouldn't be in Iraq or Afghanistan. And that's one of the things we try to communicate at the memorial. It is on. It's every Sunday, like I said, for 13 years. We are out there. We are asking for volunteers to come in and give us a helping hand. It's really exciting because we get to talk to a lot of people, people from around the world. We've talked from people from every country on this earth. They come and talk to us about who we are. We try to explain, what we are, who we are, and how we think. And they in the beginning they really thought we were pretty well an aggressive country, which we are. I mean, we are. They never knew a lot of them didn't know there were peace movements inside our country, and we were able to get this point across to them. So that's one of the things we do. But what I want most to remember is there are reasons why we're in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have to understand what those reasons are, and we have to look at those reasons and start talking about them, because we are in this hole so deep, that it's going to be very difficult to get out of. And we need to find the ways to do that. And the only way we can do that is talk with each other and talk about peace and talk about the reasons why we don't need to be there, and the importance of not being there, and the importance of what we can do with the dollar bills in our country. That we can take care of, we can have health care, and we can have free education, and we can have clean water, and we won't have to make mother of all bombs. We want mother of all health care, and we want the mother of all we want the mother of all education, and this is what we really want. No mother wants to be a bomb named after her. So we have to remember these things, and we have to make changes. So we have to talk about the reasons. If we talk about the reasons, we will get results. Because we have had results, we have changed opinions down at the memorial. We have seen different people come in who were pretty aggressive, and when they left, they weren't so aggressive, and they understood what the points we were trying to make. So I want to thank everybody down here, and I hope you understand that the reasons are important, and we need to talk about them. Thank you very much.
I want to take a moment to talk about a couple of the now monuments that are in our harbor. One is the monument to the merchant marines. It's so touching, the stories from people who have been injured or killed or traumatized by war. And I want to just honor what is called the memorial wall, and I invite any of you to go to it, that shows the many hundreds of men and women who died during World War II and other wars in the Merchant Marines. Also, we have permanently in our harbor, as of a few years ago, the USS Iowa, that will be the seat of many celebrations, fireworks display, live concert, STEM education for the youth. And the history of that ship, most people know, is that it was part of World War II. It had quite a noble history fighting fascism. But then after World War II, it was recommissioned, and it was used by Ronald Reagan in the 1980s to patrol the waters around Central and South America. And it was used, therefore, to be a bullying tactic against poor farmers and poor countries who needed a change in their country and were not allowed to have that change. How frustrating we as Americans know when we need a change and we're not allowed because of illegal, immoral, and violent acts to have that change. You cannot take away the trajectory of a people. You cannot crush it for too long. You can swallow it, but you cannot digest it. It will come back. And so we're here to say that we need to, as Michael Lindley said, in a reasonable, loving, thoughtful way, discuss these matters. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Chris Venn. He is founder and president of San Pedro Neighbors for Peace and Justice, and also a resistor to the Vietnam War.
Thank you, Rachel. I work in an organization, as Rachel mentioned, called San Pedro Neighbors for Peace and Justice. We're a community-based organization and sponsor social justice forums throughout the year and conduct a weekly peace vigil on the busiest street in San Pedro. I'm involved in this work because of personal experience as a Vietnam War resistor in 1968. When I was 18, you were sent into the military if you weren't going to college. So I heard about this war in Vietnam. I did not know where Vietnam was. And then when I found this slim country below China, I just had no idea why we were going to war. I looked for people to talk to. I grew up in a fairly large town. I grew up in Boston. And I couldn't find anyone to explain to me what I should do. Our organization's work in San Pedro includes supporting a high school peace club at San Pedro High School. Hi, San Pedro students. So the presence of the USS Iowa in our town and the celebration of war that happens with Fleet Week is of great concern to us. I have two observations to leave you with. One is we had our first Peace Club meeting of the year today. We meet on Tuesdays. And so we got to know each other. And one of the questions to the students was, how many of you have someone who's interested in joining the military? So this is a peace club. And there were 20 students there. 10 students raised their hands, meaning they had a friend who was interested in joining the military. My second observation is that at our peace vigil, we have more response to our vigil in terms of people driving by and giving us peace signs and honking than we have experienced since 2003, when the war in Iraq began. The people in this country want peace. Thank you so much.
What do we want?
Peace.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Peace.
When do we want it?
Now.
Betcha. Thank you. ¿Qué queremos?
Paz.
¿Cuándo la queremos?
Ahorita.
¿Qué queremos?
Paz.
¿Cuándo la queremos?
Ahorita.
Any other language? Okay. And next we will have a member of the wonderful national anti-war organization Code Pink. Her name is Mary Sutton, and she heads up the local peace economy campaign of Code Pink. Mary.
Hi, thank you. As she said, I'm a member of Code Pink. I am also a student of sustainability and with a focus on incarceration, and a member of Fair Chance Project. We work with formerly incarcerated people who come home from prison and jail also suffering from post-traumatic syndrome like our soldiers. In the past 4 decades, the U.S. has spent over $8 trillion on military forces in the Persian Gulf alone, supporting one of the most repressive regimes in the world, Saudi Arabia, who confront women's rights, religious freedom, and dissent with violence. Trump just signed a $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, despite the knowledge that these weapons will be used to exacerbate the already catastrophic situation in Yemen. Also in the last 40 years, wealth, industry, jobs, education, and health have been systematically extracted from poor communities and communities of color. The disinvestment of programs and services that should continue to guarantee people's civil rights, the right to food, shelter, and freedom, have left poor communities of color around the world disenfranchised and over-policed. In the same time period, the U.S. and state spending on prisons, jails, incarceration, and supervision has increased over 500%, over $80 billion today. The incarcerated population has also increased over 400%. Today, there are over 2 million people locked up in prisons, jails, and detention centers in the United States, a way that reinvest in people and the earth. Code Pink, along with many peace and disarmament groups, is launching a divestment campaign to encourage universities, religious organizations, retirement funds, mutual funds, private investors, and other financial institutions in the United States to take action to reduce violent global conflicts and slow the hyper-militarization of our world by divesting from the U.S. war machine. Thank you.